it was a very difficult time, and we are a family, and we will always be a family, and we will get through this time and hopefully be a stronger family for it.
6 children who were once worth record-breaking sums to magazine editors just for a single photograph now walk through airports, dorm hallways, and dance studios completely unrecognized. That's the strange arc of growing up as a Jolie-Pitt. The family that defined an entire era of celebrity culture has quietly dissolved into 6 separate young adults, most of whom no longer even share their father's name. So what actually happened to Maddox, Pax, Zahora, Shiloh, Knox, and Vivienne? And how did the most photographed family in Hollywood end up scattered across 3 continents, some of them legally erasing the surname that once made them famous? It starts with Maddox, the eldest of the 6 and the first child to join the family. He was adopted from an orphanage in Cambodia in 2002, back when Angelina Jolie was a single mother working as a goodwill ambassador for the UN Refugee Agency, long before Brad Pitt entered the picture. That early childhood, spent traveling alongside his mother through some of the world's most difficult humanitarian settings, shaped him in ways that are still visible today. Now in his mid-20s, Maddox has leaned hard into his Cambodian identity. He served as an executive producer on a documentary exploring his birth country's history, a project that let him reconnect with his roots in a deeply personal way. He's studying biochemistry at Yonsei University in South Korea, a path he began in 2019, and has been learning Korean alongside his coursework. He also recently earned his pilot's license, echoing a passion for aviation his mother has spoken about publicly for years. In 2023, he joined Jolie at a state dinner at the White House, one of the rare moments he's appeared at her side in a formal, public setting. He worked behind the camera as an assistant director on his mother's 2026 film Couture, and in the credits, he was billed simply as Maddox Jolie, having already dropped his father's surname from his professional work well before making it official in court. Between the move to South Korea, the name change, and the deliberate distance from the entertainment industry that raised him, Maddox reads like someone who has spent his 20s quietly building an identity that owes very little to the Pitt name. Zahora came next, adopted in 2005 from an orphanage in Hawassa, Ethiopia, on a trip her older brother Maddox is said to have encouraged their mother to take. She's now in her early 20s and enrolled at Spelman College in Atlanta, where she joined the Mu Pi chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha, the nation's first historically black sorority, whose ranks have included figures like Rosa Parks and Toni Morrison. During her induction, Zahora reportedly introduced herself using only her mother's surname, a small but pointed detail that didn't go unnoticed online. She's continued building a public voice since then, appearing as a keynote speaker at an event in Montgomery, Alabama focused on period poverty, according to reporting from AOL. Jolie herself has spoken about the emotional weight of dropping her daughter off at Spelman, describing the moment as one that nearly brought her to tears. Zahora has also been linked to actor Elijah Cooper, and the two were spotted at Disneyland in the summer of 2025, a quiet, ordinary date that stood in sharp contrast to the very public childhood she once lived. Coverage from outlets like Essence has followed her continued participation in her sorority's step and stroll traditions, painting the picture of a young woman who has built a college life defined by sisterhood and advocacy rather than tabloid attention. Then there's Shiloh, born in Namibia in 2006, the first biological child Jolie and Pitt had together, and a birth that turned into a genuine global media event at the time. Now in her 20s, Shiloh has spent recent years quietly walking away from the spotlight her parents once thrived in, pouring her energy instead into dance. She trained for years at the Millennium Dance Complex in Los Angeles, one of the most respected commercial studios in the country, and appeared in a 2026 music video for South Korean pop artist Daeung, according to Hello magazine. On the exact day she turned 18, back in May 2024, Shiloh filed to legally drop her father's surname, and the petition was approved without objection that August, making her the first of the 6 siblings to make the split official. As a child, Shiloh was frequently the subject of media speculation surrounding her gender expression, having preferred short hair and boyish clothing for much of her early years. As an adult, she's largely declined to comment on that chapter of her life, letting her dance career speak instead. She now performs and credits herself simply as Shiloh Jolie, a clean, deliberate break from the name that once dominated her childhood headlines. Pax, adopted from Vietnam in 2007, arrived as the family's 3rd child and was described by his mother at the time as tough and fiercely independent. Now in his early 20s, Pax has built a life almost entirely behind the camera, working as an assistant director and developing a serious interest in photography and filmmaking that has kept him largely out of the public eye. In 2024, he faced one of the hardest stretches of his adult life after a serious e-bike accident in Los Angeles left him with significant injuries, an ICU stay, and months of rehabilitation. According to reporting from Netflix Junkie, his recovery involved extensive physical therapy as doctors worked to help him regain strength and mobility, and while the accident initially raised concerns about his long-term health, those close to him say he made steady progress through sheer persistence. Rather than pulling back from the creative world afterward, Pax returned to work on productions and kept building his interest in visual storytelling. What sets him apart from his siblings is quieter but significant. As of mid-2026, Pax remains the only one of the six who still legally carries his father's surname in full. He's never publicly explained why, leaving the question open while nearly everyone around him has moved in the opposite direction. His life, like his siblings, was shaped profoundly by one particular flight in September 2016, when he was among the children aboard a private plane from France to Los Angeles, during which an argument broke out between Brad Pitt and a then 15-year-old Maddox. The incident triggered investigations from both the FBI and Los Angeles County's Department of Children and Family Services. Both agencies ultimately closed their cases without filing criminal charges, but the confrontation became a turning point that preceded Jolie's divorce filing and the years of custody conflict that followed. The twins, Knox and Vivienne, were born in July 2008. The youngest of the six and the last children Jolie and Pitt welcomed together before their marriage began to unravel. Both recently turned 18, and both have spent the past couple of years stepping into adulthood on strikingly independent terms. Knox graduated from Fusion Academy in Los Angeles, a school known for its highly individualized teaching model, walking at his ceremony under the name Knox Jolie. Outside academics, he's developed a serious commitment to martial arts, training and competing as a Muay Thai fighter, a discipline built on discipline and privacy rather than the entertainment world his parents made famous. He's been spotted training around Los Angeles, dressed for the gym rather than the red carpet, which says as much about where his priorities now lie as anything he's said publicly. Vivienne, his twin sister, has taken a related but distinct path. She first stepped professionally into the industry as a production assistant on the 2024 Broadway musical The Outsiders, a production her mother helped bring to the stage, and she was credited in the program simply as Vivienne Jolie. Just days after turning 18 on July 12, 2026, she filed a legal petition to become Vivienne Marceline Jolie, dropping her father's surname entirely, according to Thought Catalog. That filing made her the fifth of the six siblings to take that step, following Shiloh, Zahora, and Maddox, whose own petition was filed earlier in 2026, with Zahora's hearing on the matter reportedly scheduled for September. That leaves Pax as the lone holdout, still legally tied to a surname that almost everyone else in his family has chosen to leave behind. Back in 2008, magazines reportedly paid record sums for the first photographs of the newborn twins. Nearly 2 decades later, both have grown into adults who seem far more interested in building quiet, self-directed lives than revisiting that early spotlight. To understand why 5 of the 6 children have taken the deliberate step of dropping their father's name, it helps to go back to that 2016 flight and the years of legal conflict that followed it. Jolie filed for divorce from Pitt just days after the incident, citing irreconcilable differences and initially requesting sole physical custody of all 6 children, ending a relationship that had spanned 12 years and a 2-year marriage. What came next was one of the longest and most bitterly fought custody battles in recent Hollywood history. A private judge initially granted Pitt joint custody in 2021, only for that ruling to be overturned in 2022 after Jolie argued the judge had undisclosed business ties to Pitt's legal team. The two also remained locked for years in a separate dispute over Miraval, the French winery they had once owned together, a fight that dragged on with countersuits and financial claims well after the marriage itself had ended. Their divorce was finally finalized in December 2024, closing out a legal saga that had stretched back more than 8 years, according to AOL. But even with the paperwork settled, the emotional distance between Pitt and his adult children has reportedly remained wide, with sources close to the family describing his relationship with them as virtually non-existent in recent years, and visitation limited mainly to the younger siblings under the terms of the custody agreement. Part of what fueled that distance traces back to allegations Jolie raised in a court filing, in which she claimed Pitt had choked one of their children and struck another during that same 2016 flight, with several of the children reportedly pleading with him to stop. Pitt has denied wrongdoing throughout the legal process, and no criminal charges were ever filed following the investigations that followed. Still, the allegations have continued to shape public understanding of the family, and of why so many of the children have chosen to put physical and legal distance between themselves and their father's name. Jolie, for her part, has spoken about her children as the anchor that carried her through the hardest years of her life, describing motherhood as the thing that changed her most completely and gave her a reason to keep pushing through the most difficult stretches of the divorce and custody fight. One of her children has reportedly used her New York City apartment as a home base while building an independent adult life, a small detail she shared candidly in a 2025 interview with the New York Times, and one that speaks to just how closely the siblings and their mother have remained even as they've scattered across colleges, careers, and countries. More recently, Jolie told Variety in mid-2026 that she felt a renewed sense of strength heading into this next chapter, describing a fighting spirit that had returned after years of legal battles and family upheaval, an energy that seems to mirror what's happening across her children's lives as each of them steps further into adulthood on their own terms. Looking at all 6 of their paths side by side, what stands out isn't just how far they've traveled from the cameras that once defined their childhood, but how differently each of them has chosen to process the very same experience. Maddox has leaned into heritage, reconnecting with Cambodia through documentary filmmaking and academic study. Zahora has leaned into community, finding sisterhood and purpose within a historically black college and a sorority with a century of cultural weight behind it. Shiloh has found her voice through movement, letting dance replace the words she's largely chosen not to give the press. Pax has retreated behind the lens, building an identity in visual storytelling while quietly surviving a serious accident and choosing, alone among his siblings, to keep the name he was given. And the twins, Knox and Vivienne, are only just beginning, one through the discipline of the fight gym, the other through the collaborative world of theatre production. None of these 6 paths resemble the life their parents built together, and that distance may be exactly the point. For Angelina Jolie, watching her children step into these separate, self-authored lives seems to carry the quiet satisfaction of having protected something through years of conflict. For Brad Pitt, the picture looks far more solitary. A father increasingly on the outside of the adult lives his children are now building, watching a surname he once shared with all 6 of them fade from their legal documents one filing at a time. What began as one of the most photographed families in the world has become 6 individual stories, shaped by the same complicated childhood but written, deliberately, in 6 very different directions. Whether the distance between these children and their father ever narrows again remains an open question, one that none of them appear to be in any hurry to answer, because for now, all 6 seem far more focused on the futures they're building than on the past that once defined them for everyone else.